go ahead and we'll do 2 cylinders, I guess. Let's put the crank. I'm going to have to check for the oil screws. Let's put 1 and 2, 1 and 4 down. We'll do 1 first. Alright, so I picked up the Wiseco RCS 08800. It's an 88mm tapered spring compressor. That should make this job a lot easier. So that's it. It's tapered, so it'll compress the rings as they go into the cylinder. But first, you oil up those cylinder walls, and then let me clean them a little bit, because I don't know what happened with that. And then we'll check clearances. Go dirty. Let's clean this. Whatever's on it. Alright. We'll get our rod bearings. Rod bearings. Now the rod bearings have a little, can you see that? It's got a little, I don't know, a little a tang, you would call it. So same thing, we're just going to line that up. Put that in there. Same thing with the cap. It goes this way. I just line that thing up in there evenly. I push it in. It's a little high. Make it even. Okay. And there's numbers on the side of the rod on one side that'll that's what the orientation you put the cap in. Okay, so let's oil the cylinder up. We don't want to put anything dry. Also, we want to take and oil our sleeve up. We want that to go in dry. Alright. Alright, so we put the tool in and we push it down just enough so the skirt hangs out. Let's see. Okay, you don't want to nick the cylinder walls. So we'll drop it in nice and easy. Okay, now the tool's in there. And our arrow is this way towards the front of the motor, which is good. So hopefully the rod is good. We'll just, hopefully I don't need any tool to, there we go. And we pushed her in. I don't want to go crazy with that because I don't want that, like I said, I don't want to take a chance of nicking the journal on the crank, so I'm going to have to flip it over and take a look. So I'm just going to clean. Just going to clean the second piston for number 4. The bearing surfaces. to clean the bearings. Make sure our arrow is towards the front of the motor. Drop our piston in. The skirt's hanging out a little bit. Very carefully drop it down. Take this. This guy. Pop him in. Alright guys, so I popped these 2 pistons in last night and I called it a night. I did clearance these with the plastic gauge and these guys are installed and torqued. Don't worry though, because we're going to do these 2 together. So we're going to clean this up a little bit, oil up the cylinder some more, and we'll drop those in. And I checked the clearance real quick. We don't have any issues with the oil squirters, which is good. And I'll show you on the bench. I'll compare one of these new pistons to a stock one. So if we look at this, you can see this is a factory piston and rod out of the motor I got. You can see how the rod is bent. That was in the number 1 cylinder. But if you take a look at the piston skirt, you can see the cutout right here. That is for the oil squirter for some clearance. When I bought the Manley pistons, it said it was clearance for the oil squirters, but I didn't see any cutouts in the piston skirt. But I don't know how well you can see that. The piston skirt is a little smaller, so it clears the oil squirters just fine. So what we're going to do is I'm going to drop these 2 pistons in. We're going to check the clearance on the crank. I'm actually going to wipe these cylinders down and redo it, just in case anything got in there. It wasn't a bag, but so we'll use our tool. That tool works very nice. going to clean the bearing surface. That guy. And we'll clean the cap. So, clean our bearing. Put this in with that notch right there. Push it down. Make sure it's kind of even. And what we'll do is we'll clean this end. Set this in the cap. Like so. You want to make sure these 2 points right here, the bearing is even with the surface. I'm going to verify my ring end gaps to make sure nothing moved while it was sitting on the bench all by itself. Alright, an oil ring, expander ring is butted and not overlapped. Top ring gap is on the side of the expander ring. The second ring is right here. Bottom oil spacer ring is on that side and the top is on that side, so that's good. So we'll go ahead and we'll drop this in the tool that I oiled on the bench, like that. We'll push it down. And the arrow on the piston is that way. This is the front of the engine. That's the way it's got to get installed. So very carefully lower the rod in there. You don't want to nick the side of the cylinder wall. Get the skirt in there. Kind of center it up so it goes right into the crank. And I'm going to use just the edge of this handle and the rag to plop that in there. So you want to hold the tool down. That's all it takes. And I don't like to push it all the way down because I want to make sure that rod ain't going to hit the crank journal. I'm going to clean the other piston and get it ready to install. Or not the piston. I'm going to clean the mating surfaces of the bearing on the rod. Clean the bearings. And then we can pop in the last piston, check the clearances. Okay. Grab our tool back. Verify the rings. and they turn freely. Top ring gap, second ring gap, oil control ring on that side, and oil control ring spacer is over there. That's good. And the arrow faces that way. And you want to follow the arrow, and these pistons are nice, and this is a giveaway. If you look at these pistons, the Gen 1 Mazdas had a that's a Gen 1 Mazda piston. And you can see the two valve reliefs in the top, the indentations, but it's kind of like a flat piston. And the second gen Mazdas had a different design on the bowl, which is similar to this. So if you look at this cutout right here, that's for fuel atomization from the injectors. And these two pistons also have the intake and the exhaust cutouts. I guess that's so you could run higher lift cams and things like that. But so either way, this is going to be an improvement over what was in there. And also, what I was going to say was with the bowl like this for the fuel atomization, that's going to face the head side of where the injectors are, which is your PVC side. Your PCV side. Alright, so pop this in. Push it down till the skirt hangs out a little bit. Drop it in there nice and slowly. Skirt goes in. And we go. Alright. Same thing. And you're not forcing these things in there hard. You hold that tool down and just give it a nice little tap. And that's it. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll flip the block over and we'll connect it up to the crank and check the clearances. All right. Carefully. This thing's getting heavier by the minute. Gonna have to put it on the engine stand soon. All right. So here's what we got. Maybe what I'll do, I'm going to put you guys on the head cam so you can see exactly what I'm doing, because that's not a good angle. Okay guys, so I got you on the head cam now. It's your two rod journals, and you can see it's easier to work off an engine stand. I got to take the old motor off the engine stand, but you don't want to nick these journals when you do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a screwdriver. Okay, I'm going to tilt this forward and you can see the rods, and I'm going to just stick it in there to hold the rod where I need it and push the piston up. Just like that. We'll do the other one. And there they are. So now take our plastic gauge, Set it on the journal. And the other ones were in spec, so I'm assuming these ones are going to be equivalent. And they came in about 2000s, which is what Manly recommends. Alright, so we're going to take our number 2 cap. We're going to set it on the crank gently. Try not to move it. And we're going to take and oil our bolts up. I just use this tub of oil. Oil our bolts up. Drop that in there. Grab the next one. Alright, where's my... Here we go. Grab this next cap, set that on. You want to make sure these bolts are on straight because they could be off a little bit. You know, the piston could have turned in the bore a little bit, so it's not quite even. So just take your time and don't cross-thread them, and draw them up evenly. Once you feel a little resistance, swap over to the next bolt. Now it's snug. And that's snug. Now this guy is giving me a little bit of an issue, so I'm just going to tilt it and push the piston up more. That way we don't cross-thread our bolts. Alright, where's my wrench? Okay. Same principle here. Torque settings for these are ARP. If we look at the Manly, ARP 2000 bolts are 1.5 inches, 60 foot-pounds. Assembly at Manly Performance. Recommended torque value with 30 weight oil is 55 to 65. I went ahead and I did it in 3 steps, just like I did with the mains. We'll set this to 20. Now when you torque, you want to go... You don't want to come this way with it because it'll move the crank. So that's 20. 20. Okay. We'll step it up to 40. And I went ahead and set them to 64 foot-pounds for the final torque. It's 40. Final pass of 64. 64 foot-pounds. And now we get the joy of taking it off and checking our clearances. Again, when we remove them, we want to kind of stay in the same way. We don't want to turn the crank if we can't. Take them off even. These sometimes can be a pain in the butt. You don't want to mess up the thread, so just use it on the outer part and kind of just pop it. I don't like to move the crank with the plastic gauge in there. Oh, what did I use? I used this guy right here. Not that it's going to be any different. Pop it a little bit. And you can see the plastic gauge. When we take a measurement, it's just over 2 thousandths. Maximum clearance is 3,000. So this is perfect. And the other two pistons checked out the same way. So I'm happy with all the clearances. Make sure you get all that plastic gauge off the bearing surface and the crank journal. Don't mix up your caps. Get any lint off of there. Alright, so we're going to take our assembly lube, and because I have the rod end against the crank journal, I'm going to put just enough on here. When I spin it around, it'll catch the other one. Put that back in place. And I like to put a little bit on the edge here. And those tangs on the rod and the cap will be opposite of each other, or there's numbers engraved on the rod end and the cap end on one side only, so you can't put it on wrong. Close this up. We're going to oil our bolts some more. Screw down evenly. Now we'll repeat the torque sequence. Start off with 20. See how the crank moved when I did it like that? That's why I said, guys, when you do it this way. So if you go against it, it won't move. All right, go to 40. It's 64. That's it. What I like to do is I like to just mark, especially when I'm just taking my time building this thing, clean out the rod bolts a little bit in the cap. I just like to put a little mark on it so I know I torqued it. Let's do this one. That way if I get dragged away, I remember. Of course I didn't do the mains because they're covered in moly grease. Alright, so let's rotate it around. And it's flat on the cardboard, so I'm going to lift it up a little bit. It feels good.